The tech job market can be a confusing place. Sometimes, without really committing to a job search, it's quite hard to find out the details about companies that are hiring in the space. And that's where Haystack comes in. Haystack is a portal with a clear view of all the coolest companies in the tech industry. You can see what it's like to work there and what they're hiring for. And best of all, you won't have to have a 20-minute conversation with a recruiter to find out the company's name. To find out more about Haystack, go to haystackapp.io or check out episode 59 of The Coder Career. Thanks to Haystack for sponsoring, and enjoy the show. Happy Monday to all the developers out there, and welcome to another episode of The Coder Career with me, your host, Cameron Blackwood. Today's guest is Simon Grimm. If you're into the dev podcast ecosystem, chances are you've heard from Simon before. I've actually appeared on the podcast he co-hosts with Simon Barker, the All the Code podcast. Now, as well as being a podcaster, Simon is a successful YouTuber and runs his own business called Galaxies.dev, where you can learn to code a variety of tools and languages. Today, we have a chat about Simon's journey to learn to code, why he's diversifying his content away from just Ionic stuff, and what his future holds with Galaxies.dev. Do remember, if you enjoy the show, to leave a rating and share it with your friends. But without further ado, here is my conversation with Simon Grimm. Hey Simon, thanks so much for joining me on the show. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Glad to be here finally. So you've been on our show before when I wasn't there, and now I'm here.
Yeah, right back in the day, in the early days, in fact. And obviously, of course, your co-host came on The Coder Career, I think maybe 30 episodes ago or so. So it's only right that you are now making an appearance here. So for people who aren't familiar, I know a lot of people listen to both our podcasts, but for people who aren't familiar, who are you? What podcast do you co-host? And what other things are you doing? Because you're a very busy man at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I'm Simon. I'm a self-employed developer for close to 6 years now. I run the Ionic Academy, which is an online school focused on Ionic. I just recently launched a new project called Galaxies.dev, which is kind of the same concept. It's an online school with courses, but from different creators and covering everything beyond the edges of web dev universe. We're going to get into that probably later. Yeah, and besides that, I'm also the co-host of the All the Code podcast, also with Simon. So a bit of confusion if you throw in Simon. So we're on that podcast, we're Simon and Simon. That's really a problem. But I'm Simon G from Germany. It's quite easy to remember.
Oh, that is good because you got Simon B, so Simon British, and Simon G,
Exactly.
Simon German. I never thought about that. I've never picked up on that, and I've been listening to All the Code for ages. But it's a
We
really
should
awesome
introduce this
podcast.
more often. Yeah, we should probably
Yeah,
introduce this as a concept.
yeah. People should definitely, as soon as you're done with this episode, go and queue up All the Code because I highly recommend it. So, obviously, you didn't immediately start. You didn't immediately start as a podcaster in the industry. What's your story? How did you pick up coding? What sparked that interest? And how have you got to the point where you are now?
Okay, starting to code would actually take us back like probably 16 years, 17 years. I think I actually got started very early. I don't have any records about this anymore, but I feel that it was something like I was 12 or 13 because my brother at that time should have been like 15, 16, and he was getting into Windows and Objective-C development back then. And that's when I picked up like HTML and PHP and just played around with that stuff. It just continued from there, basically. It has always been a pattern in my life. Like in school, we were very fortunate. So since grade 8, I think I had like a course about Java and stuff like that. In university, I, of course, learned a bit. But that's when it's got really like really hard because then I learned Objective-C and Swift, and that basically brought me on the whole mobile app development trajectory back then. But I learned this. You don't really learn that in university, by the way. Like I picked this up with a friend because we wanted to develop an iOS app because I thought like it's epic to have a game on your own iPhone. Like that was all I ever wanted. And so we picked up Objective-C, and you can learn those things for free. Back then it was like the Stanford course. I don't know, Stanford or Harvard. There was some kind of podcast or online course for free about that.
There's
Which we both took.
CS50 for Harvard, but I don't know if they do mobile stuff. I did that when I first started learning, and it was like it starts you off with Scratch, which is really fun, and then the next
Mhm.
lecture is C, not even C++, just C, and it's
Oh,
absolutely brutal. But the guy who runs the course is amazing, and it's really cool because it's literally just a
yeah.
Harvard. 101 CS course that you get to study. So I recommend people check that out. But that's awesome that you're able to do coding in high school, because like in the UK, I mean, I don't know if it was just my school, but for some perspective of how forward thinking my school was, they made me give up IT when I was 12. So no more IT classes past then, and there was no programming, nothing like that. But Latin was compulsory until I was 14. So
Yeah, I think I learned Latin for I don't know how many years, at least 6 years. I think more, 7 maybe.
yeah,
So yeah,
it's not
I
it's
should
not that
have
it's
learned. Like if we get into the school system, there are so many things they should teach you, like how to handle money, probably, or I don't know, stuff like that. Money, IT, like life things, and probably not Latin and like whatever language.
Yeah, there's a huge political debate going on in the UK at the moment around. So the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said something along the lines of he wants everyone to study maths until they're 18, I think. But the
Mhm.
problem is, I see with that is, yes, we do have a STEM shortage. We generally worldwide have a shortage of people that want to work in STEM. But the issue is, the reason why people quit maths early is because it's not framed in an interesting way.
Mm.
And I was trying to sort of pitch this idea to my girlfriend over dinner the other night, and I was saying, like, what they should do is they should frame some of your classes around a mock business in high school, where your maths is like you're doing your accountancy and things like that for it, and then maybe for English you're doing your marketing, and for IT you could be making some kind of app for it. Like, that would make it so much more interesting. Obviously, it
Yeah.
would be a complete radical overhaul of how everything works, but these concepts aren't framed in real world terms. And you mentioned about the having a CS degree, you don't learn things like mobile apps. And I don't have a CS degree myself. I'm self taught, but that's all I've heard as well. Is like, it's really, CS is useful for teaching you how stuff really works, but in terms of like
Yeah.
practical knowledge it will take us to work base is often quite lacking.
Yeah, if you don't have any self interest in like making your own projects during university, you're kind of like getting nothing from it. So mine was business informatics. So there was a combination of like business stuff, project management, and like those kind of things plus informatics. But what you learn is really like the basics, not even really like Java or any kind of language. It's more like what is a singleton, or how is like the fastest way to implement quicksort, or how does whatever sorting algorithm work, and those kind of structure. I mean, that can be helpful definitely in life, but I don't really learn a lot from that. I learned more from just playing around with my own code and learning stuff. And I completely agree to learning. Like just the other day, I heard on the My First Million podcast when they talked that in university you should have problems like, okay, make a viral video on TikTok, then you're gonna get an A or something. Like that is really relevant to today. Or I don't know, play with ChatGPT and build an AI stuff. Like that would be so cool. I don't know. I should probably become a teacher in school again.
Yeah, I think I listened to that same episode. So I quite like the My First Million podcast, and I think they were saying there was some like experimental business marketing class where you do have to go viral on TikTok, and
Yeah.
it's stuff like that. Like I have a business degree actually, and it's like I found a lot of the time it really boring because it was just so.
Mhm.
I guess it was the way CS is to modern programming, business degrees are to modern business, where just so much about the theory. And like, there was one module on startups that I absolutely loved, and then one module on like launching a mock business and just stuff like that. That's how I think that's how you actually learn. I mean, from your side, if you were sort of, I guess you go to university about the same age in Germany as you do in the UK. So if
Yeah.
you were 18 again, would you still go to university first off, and secondly, would you still study computer science? Do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it also depends from country to country. It's different. Like I think in Germany at the moment, it's is it free or is it quite cheap? I actually don't
I
know
guess
right
that's a
now.
big factor
And of
because
course, in
I
course
had to pay
In the United
30K.
States,
Yeah.
yeah, you get a debt for that. So if you're gonna pay a lot of money for that, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't, because honestly, you can learn so many things for free. Like if you just have a self interest in programming, I think in like a year you should be able to pick up most of the basics to actually find a job. And it doesn't matter if you go to like a boot camp or you just take there's so many free courses, like for Swift, for JavaScript, wherever you look, you're gonna find some kind of creator who has like a 30-day beginner course. Just for example, for JavaScript, Simon, my co-host, launched a 30 days of JavaScript course, which is completely for free. Like you can go 30 days through this, and you're gonna have a decent JavaScript skills. Really, like not he's starting at zero pretty much, and this is available for pretty much everything. You just need like a general idea of what you want to do, probably. Like, do you want to build websites or do you want to build something else? But if you don't know, honestly, just get started and get a feeling for it. I mean, if you don't like JavaScript and building websites, you can still change to something else. Like, there's so many things like machine learning, which is usually around Python these days. So Python is always a good idea. You can also do backend development with something else. What is cool? Rust is cool right now, right?
Yeah, Rust is cool. Although I probably wouldn't recommend that as a first language myself, just because I always think about everything in terms of the job market. Is there's so few junior
Oh
Rust
yeah.
jobs out there, but maybe in 2025 it's going to be a different story because it's hard. It's people are moving to Rust now, which means I think they're hiring like experienced developers who have now learnt Rust. But I imagine that changes. Like I'm actually going to do I think I'm going to do a YouTube video soon of my tech stack for 2030 because everyone else is doing my tech stack for 2023. Yeah, so I want to do 2030. I'm going to try and go long, and then in 7 years' time, I'm going to go back on it when I'm like all grey. I'm going to I'm going to go back and react to it. I think so. I think it'll be a fun video. Yeah, you should. You should. I'll be curious. I mean, could you give anyone a preview off the fly, like in terms of what you reckon would be in your 2030 tech stack?
Oof. I don't know. I feel like we're gonna have something different because right now I'm very much into JavaScript and all the cool things that appear, and they all make something a tiny bit different, a tiny bit better, but it's not revolutionary like React
Mm.
was back then. So I feel like I don't know when in the next 1 to 10 years there should be something completely different, which like combines all the reactivity and all the different approaches that are around right now, and that just becomes, or at least that's what I wish and hope, that it like becomes the Ruby on Rails of front end development, because Ruby
Mm.
on Rails for backend, no, Ruby on Rails is full stack. So that was always great. It is still going strong. And for JavaScript, it's like it's so there are so many different things. You can go so many directions, and it just feels so overwhelming and confusing to some degree, that I think there should be like some unified thing. I talked about this on the pod before. Like if you go into Swift or into Flutter, it feels so refreshing because you have your clear boundaries, they're the packages, and just go build something. And if you look up JavaScript, like you can read for weeks about opinions people have about different frameworks and technologies. It's just not really beginner friendly. I mean, JavaScript is beginner friendly, but the whole ecosystem I feel isn't very beginner friendly anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And something I've mentioned on here before is how, because of the usual usage of the word outside of programming, opinionated is seen as a bad thing automatically. Because I don't ever see it as a really, I mean, in the UK, it's often used as a euphemism where, like, oh, yeah, he's very opinionated about that. Like, it's like, oh, he's really rude, basically. It's in a work setting is what that really means. And so we see it as a bad thing, and actually, opinionated often isn't a bad thing, particularly if you're more junior, where you want a clear, defined way of looking at things. I mean, that's why they say React is a library rather than a framework, isn't it? Because frameworks are more opinionated. Something like Angular is a lot more opinionated. I mean, something that you mentioned about the Ruby on Rails or JavaScript, maybe this is controversial. I would argue it already exists, and I would say it's next. What do you think?
Yeah, Nexus would definitely be the equivalent right now, but yeah, yeah, probably it exists, but we haven't settled all on Next.js. I
Yeah.
don't know if we will, probably. Right now, Angular is going strong again, so that's actually kind of funny to watch from the outside, because even React folks suddenly say, "Hey, oh, there's a lot going on in the Angular community. Maybe it isn't so bad after all." I don't know where this is going in like the next 2-3 years. This is really interesting to observe.
It was very sudden, actually, because I was watching a video this morning on it, actually. from someone in the React community who I'm actually not going to name because I know your co-host has beef with him. But
I know who
I
he
do
is.
quite like it. I do quite like his videos, and I was watching his one on. He made one the other this morning for about how Angular's picking up in popularity again, and I do think it's been underrated this whole time. A lot of the Angular haters are actually often people that have never used it. I think. So I've used React more, but I've also done Angular for maybe like 18 months in my first dev job, and it's pretty powerful stuff. Like, there's a reason why Google continue to support it. Like, they're not stupid. Like, they wouldn't continue supporting something that doesn't work. You know?
Yeah, I don't know either where this is coming from. I think some people are still pissed off because of Angular JS and then Angular 2
Yeah,
because it was basically a whole rewrite. But that was like, I don't know, 8 years ago now or something. Like,
yeah,
can we get over that? Apple also did like come up with Swift, and people previously had Objective C. It's not like people are now saying,
exactly.
I'm not gonna pick up Swift. So and in terms of opinionated, yeah, that's also what I enjoy about Angular. It's also what I enjoy about things like Nest.js for backend development. It's sometimes it's actually good to have the structure. You get into an Angular project and you immediately know, okay, here are the components, here are the pipes, here are the services, and you feel right at home in those projects. And you open one React project and another, and they're all different. Everyone names their folder
Mm.
different. Sometimes it's pages, sometimes source, app, screens, whatever you want to call it. So I also think that Angular was kind of underrated. It was funnily always going great in enterprise context, especially also here in Germany. I know many big companies are using Angular because I don't know. We Germans like kind of have structure and a good architecture. I don't know, but yeah, I will definitely watch that video as well. I know
Yeah,
who you refer to, so I'm gonna check it out. He recently tweeted something as well where he said like, "Oh, I feel what's going on in the Angular community." I
yeah.
think React is not adopting signals, or they're talking a lot. I just see a lot of Dan Abramov. He's like the creator talking about stuff, and I mean, honestly, I don't really understand some of the talk. Like, even after being in the industry for
Mm.
8 years, they're talking about server components and what's the best here and there and different nuances. And I honestly, I don't really get that sometimes. I just want to build some cool stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important that we acknowledge that actually as two guys that are experiencing the industry. Is like, I know what you mean. It's like sometimes just I think I agree. I just do get the feeling like, oh, I'm just sick of debating this. Let's build something. And I read Peter Levels' book, and I keep shouting it out on a podcast, and
Yeah.
that's because it's so damn good. And he says, and no shade to people that do this, he said, the people who are arguing about what framework is best are not building on Twitter are not building anything cool because they're spending all their energy doing that. Because he builds all these amazing projects, and he makes millions per year with these innovative web apps, and his stack is PHP and jQuery. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I wouldn't recommend people learn that in 2023, but like, it's because he uses the tools that are in his box already, and he's not looking to get some kind of employment out of it. You should basically. I think people should use programming as a means to an end in terms of the commercial value add, either as an employee or as an entrepreneur. Like, there are a lot of different routes you can go down with that. I mean, maybe I'm looking at this too much like a capitalist, but I feel like that's kind of the world we live in, you know?
Yeah, the Peter Levels approach is basically also my approach. Just use what works and build cool project. But I also understand that, like in some contexts, if you're talking about like finance or banking, you're gonna have like a really decent programming language, and you have to make really conscious choices about technology and stuff. But I think it's quite easy if you follow all the people on Twitter or wherever where they talk about the latest stuff to forget that, like, I think most people, they don't make choices like, oh, we get into a 2 month analysis of React versus Angular and deep dive into Next.js versus something. They just like, okay, what's cool? Yeah, the market says, okay, React. Yeah, okay, our next project, we're going to use React. That's basically the decision process. And I think, I don't know how high the number is, but I feel like the number of companies or developers just doing the process like that is very high actually in the end.
Yeah, I agree, and I think people aren't looking at these tiny marginal gains necessarily. They're just looking at what what's interesting, what can we attract developers to work on, and also as well, I think a big shock to me when I finally broke into the industry was that every company is not using the latest and greatest
Yeah.
of absolutely everything. I think so. My story is, if you're not familiar, I'm a former technical recruiter, and funnily enough, got my start recruiting Angular developers in Germany of all things. So I ended up being quite knowledgeable about that because my main question was AngularJS or Angular 2 was the one I would get quite a lot, which I didn't really understand at the time, but now I do understand. So every company, they're not going in and using the latest and greatest like tools and tech, and I think that's what came as a big shock to me. Weirdly, the other thing that came as a big shock was that companies use UI libraries, because I always thought that was cheating. And I always felt really guilty about using them when I was learning to code. And actually, it turns out I use Ant Design in my job like every single day, and it just makes my life so much easier.
Really, at design. Yeah. We all have just such a limited perspective on things, like the things you'd use and the things you see your friends use or colleagues use, and probably the people, the bubble you follow on Twitter. But it's so easy to forget that there's so much else out there. Like,
Mm,
if you feel like PHP is your thing, yeah, Laravel is going strong. Like, just go
yeah.
for it. If you think React is it, go for React. If you like Angular, go for Angular. If you listen to the people like at the really cutting edge or bleeding edge of web development, and when they talk about reactivity or not continuity, that was Apple. What was the other thing that Quick had? Resumability and
Mm,
the edge and all those cool things. And then you go into your work and you just work on an old Java JSP or something. Like, yeah, that's the world. That's the reality. Not everyone's using the latest tools. And we also need to understand that it's fine. Like, pages and websites can be fast, or they don't have to be optimized for the last millisecond. Like, most of us are not working for Facebook or Google or Amazon, where it counts if your shopping cart opens in 100 milliseconds or 400. So if you have that gap that's available to you, then like it completely doesn't matter which technology you're using. If you're getting
yeah.
Lighthouse score 80 or if you're getting Lighthouse score 70, that can make a difference in some cases. But most of these tools are really optimized. Like, React is from Facebook, so Facebook made this for their own use case. And Facebook definitely has different requirements than your traditional marketing agency who's developing apps and websites for like the middle stand unit industry or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think pragmatism is a very underrated aspect of being a developer, to the point where, right, I do need to improve this, but how much by? Because there's you're having to people don't view their time enough as an economic unit, in the sense of, I'm going to put X amount of time into it. If I improve it by say 80% and I spend 3 hours on it versus spending 3 days on it and improving it by 100%, it's so much better to spend the short amount of time and get those 80% get that 80% done. It's one of those ones that people overlook a lot, and I think it's the main. I don't know why it happens, but I think sometimes we fall into trap of viewing ourselves. And sorry if my cat's coming up on the mic there. Sometimes we fall into trap of viewing ourselves too much as artists. Like, I do think code can be art, but I think sometimes people can take that a little bit too far. I don't know. I don't know if you found that, or maybe I'm being a bit controversial there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also see I'm following like the TypeScript expert, and they're doing really crazy things with TypeScript. And whenever I see it on Twitter, I feel like, oh, Simon, you have actually no idea about TypeScript at all. Like, I'm just using types for my variables and functions, and
Yeah,
they are doing so crazy things. Honestly, when I sometimes see their code snippet, it looks to me like they have a different programming language. I sometimes
yeah.
feel like, is this C or something? Like, they have this constructs and satisfies and all the keywords of a language, and I'm not making use of that. That's quite easy then to feel like you're not as good as them. And yeah, I say this after like being in this for 10 years now or something. I don't know if this will ever end. I
Yeah.
assume it won't.
I agree. I don't think it'll. Yeah, I think it will stay this way, because I think it's always going to be the same way. People are going to push things to the limits, but in terms of the vast majority of devs were working on stuff for commercial reasons. We're either trying to make money or save money, and therefore a lot of the time going completely all the way, and using things to the very limit of what's possible. A lot of the time, you're not actually you're going too far almost. It's like if every car on the road was an F1 car. but it would be pointless. I mean, to be fair, maybe that's a bad example speaking to someone from Germany where you don't have speed limits on some of the autobahns, but in the UK you can't go above 70 anywhere. So it's like, for me, like I don't even see the point
What
in
is 70
upgrading.
in kilometers? That is miles, right?
Uh, yeah, about 100,
100?
I reckon. Yeah, probably about
That is your
100.
maximum? 100?
Yeah, yeah. So maybe 110.
Oh,
I'm not sure of exactly.
wow.
So for me, it's like, what's the point in? I quite like cars, but what's the point in me upgrading my 1.4 liter Polo? Like, I see no reason to do it because it's not like I can go particularly fast.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense with that speed.
Yeah,
Oh, that's crazy.
and
In Germany, like the minimum is usually like 120 on the autobahn.
to
And
be
then
fair,
but we don't have that many places where it's infinite anymore. Like I think they are getting less. I think we should also get rid of them at some point. I'm
yeah,
not really a big fan. Like that can happen really bad accidents. When
mm,
you turn left and somebody comes with like 220 on that lane.
God.
It's really
Yeah,
yeah.
I think us Brits, I'm not sure we could be trusted with with a lack of speed limit. To be honest, having driving some of the stuff I see in Edinburgh, driving around the streets here, like most of the streets here have like I guess a 30 kilometer per hour limit, and even then, I still see people make some quite incredible crashes. So yeah, it's probably a good thing we don't have that. And turning it back a bit more to dev, because I don't know. I think I brought us onto cars there. Turning it back a bit more into dev, I don't know if you like this word, but I would definitely describe you as kind of a guru for Ionic. How did you get so into one technology where you kind of became the Ionic guy? So I know you're moving, because I know you actually mentioned this on the podcast recently. You're kind of moving away to diversifying your content a bit more.
Mm.
But what made you a fan of Ionic, and why do you think people should try and use it?
So in my first job, I was hired as a native mobile developer for iOS. That was cool, but after a while, I think I just by chance discovered Ionic. So that must have been something like 2014 when Ionic 1 was out. So they basically just got started. I think I just picked it up, I gave it a try, and I found this quite interesting because I never had the skill to develop an Android application. And that time, the narrative was basically, yeah, you need to be on iOS and Android, the market is a lot bigger. So actually, I've changed my perspective on that quite a bit over the last weeks. But back then, it was definitely the case that everyone said, yeah, you need an iOS and you need an Android app. So I learned Ionic, which helps you to develop with web technologies, an app for iOS and Android. You basically wrap your web view into, with Cordova back then, into a Cordana, and then it was a native mobile application. So we can discuss a whole episode on if this is a native app or not. But let's say it is a native app, because you can install it from the App Store and you can run it on your phone. And that's usually for my mom. That's definitely a native mobile application.
Yeah, in practical terms, that makes it native. Like
Yeah,
I've had this debate on here a few times about what actually is native, but
yeah,
in my mind, again, we talk about pragmatism. If you can,
yeah.
if it looks like an app and it behaves like an app, it's probably an app.
If you got access to all the device functionalities, then it's a native app, and I can get that with Cordova. So I started blogging about it back then, just to like document my own learnings. And I had started actually blogging a bit before, and I blogged about stuff like Dart or something that was coming up, and nothing really got traction. But once I had like 4, 5, 6 Ionic posts, I started to notice that the Ionic stuff was getting actually more and more views, and that people kind of resonated with the Ionic stuff. So if you see something work, you of course double down on it. So I just continued writing Ionic stuff. I mean, overall the time, I sometimes switched because I thought like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I tried out other frameworks. I just said this yesterday to someone else. Funnily enough, the most popular video on my YouTube channel is a React Native video, and I did this I think 8 years ago. So I'm pretty sure if I had followed React Native and if I had switched to React Native 8 years ago, I would now be the guru of React Native probably, and have an even bigger, probably already have 1 million on YouTube. But anyway, it did went well with Ionic as well. I carved out my own niche there, and it just happened that after years, like I was always getting in contact with the team, with the CEO Max Lynch from Ionic, and with the DevRel guys. And I mean, if you constantly, pretty much every week, write about them, they just know you, and if people look up something, they pretty much always find my articles. I even sometimes look up myself something about Ionic, and then I find my own article. So I feel like I covered all the topics about Ionic in the last 6, 7, 8 years. And although I never really felt like I was an expert, because at the core, Ionic is still mostly UI stuff, and in the background there's Angular or now React or Vue or whatever you use. And I didn't really felt like an Angular expert. I don't feel like it because I see other doing more crazy things with it. But yeah, I guess I accepted at some point in terms of Ionic and the UI. And I could pretty much write you a list of all the available UI components with their CSS variables and functions right now. Because I'm pretty much daily on the documentation page, and then you just naturally become like the guru of that technology.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think blogging is becoming a bit of a lost art in the sense of, and I'm a terrible example for this because I do all my content on YouTube, TikTok, and podcasts, obviously. So it's generally because I can't be bothered to write a lot. I find it easier to talk, so I can't be bothered often to blog as well. So do you recommend blogging as a thing for people to get into still? Because the SEO benefits are great. A lot of people have tried to convince me actually to get into it for Code a Career.
That's a good question. So the interesting thing is, by the way, I just noticed the video is called "The Angular Comeback." I was just checking out YouTube, so that's a video I'm going to look at. So I think, yes, it's definitely kind of lost art. And when I got started with blogging about like 8 years ago, people at that point, so that was 2015, said blogging is dead. Nobody's blogging anymore. And guess what? It still worked for me. So I don't know. Today, I would probably also say, yeah, blogging is dead, but you could probably still do it. I mean, it's still useful if you want to look up like the code or stuff. I don't know how this is, or how this will change with ChatGPT in the next time. If you just ask like, hey, can you build me a login page with Tailwind and stuff like that, and you just get the code, that probably is better. But still, in terms of articles, I still like to read and follow the thoughts of people. The trend is, of course, going to like even short form videos, but I mean, you can't describe something in a minute on YouTube Short. I mean, they're probably going to raise that limit soon, but in a minute, you just can't explain anything in real. Yes, you can make a video, 5 or 10 minutes about it, but I still think that blogging definitely has some value. Of course, it has some SEO value if you can build up a lot of things. So that is still legit today, and unless Google disappears at some point, which I don't know if it will, it's gonna still be relevant if you're gonna have like really good content on your page, and then people will still find you. But you probably want to be in different places, and only blogging, I don't know if you can really carve out something for yourself if you only blog. I guess you still have to do something a bit more visual, be it something on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, YouTube. I think that's just how our society has become. And like all the people, I mean, people who are now 13, 14, which love to use TikTok, I mean, in 5 years, they will be in the developer market, and they still probably use TikTok, or else they just prefer watching video at that point. So you get to have to factor that in what probably the next generation of developers.
Yeah, it's a real challenge actually because my biggest following by far is on TikTok, and actually have getting people to find useful like value out of my videos is quite tricky because the longer you make the videos, the worse retention stats are, and therefore the worse it will get pushed out and perform. So I find it a bit of a frustration. I mean, TikTok's now got a 10-minute video limit, and obviously YouTube's Shorts is only 1 minute. So I agree. I think they'll raise it, but it's still a tricky one because I I try and provide enough value, but the more value I see to provide, at least in my mind, the more likely is someone's just going to swipe on and not actually watch much of the video, and therefore it doesn't get pushed out. So instead, the stuff that I do well, I think literally my best performing video on TikTok got like 150,000 views,
Oh, crazy.
and it's me having. I saw a video about interviews, and because my niche is kind of like ex technical recruiter, now software engineer, I've seen it both sides of the table kind of thing. I reacted to this video without even thinking. It's like my third video on TikTok. I've just come back from rugby training, I look filthy, and I've whacked my phone out and I'm like, yeah, so this is what I think about this X, Y, and Z, and then literally just put the phone down. It's not even edited, no music, nothing, and then bam, like it gets all this, and then other ones that I'll spend maybe an hour editing the TikTok, it gets like 100 views.
Yeah. That's so frustrating. I just looked at your feed, and it's like sometimes a video has 12K views for no reason because the thumbnail looks exactly like the one next to it, and it just has text. And I should probably do TikTok again. Are you still doing TikTok?
Yeah, still pretty regularly. I try and get like 4 or 5 out a week, if I
Oh,
can,
nice.
and I find it's a difficult one because controversy does well. So I
Mm.
said W3 schools documentation is bad. Use MDN, and a lot of people got upset with me. But the video performed great. So
Yeah, that's
and then
awesome.
as well, like anecdotes do well, memes do well. But and from what I understand, dancing does well. But I don't think a bloke like me is necessarily the kind of person people are looking for to do a dance.
Yeah, I've built by myself also a little TikTok following for a time. I know I'm not doing it right now, but I basically also did it like following what's cool on TikTok, like which sound is cool right now, and then just doing this where you move your mouth and they say something in the background and you do something funny or it is a funny sound. And yeah, you can totally build up a following on TikTok just like that. I don't know how valuable such a following is. Like,
Mm,
if I have a following who like my funny videos, can I convert them to get a pro subscription for Galaxies.dev? I don't know. I mean, maybe yes. That's probably how TikTok works, but it's not really an educated audience that's following me because of my great developer content, right? They are following me
yeah.
because of funny meme stuff.
That's the thing. You want to have the bought in followers. So even though I have maybe 10% of the audience with the podcast and I do on my TikTok, I know the people here are more bought into what we discuss and have more of a genuine interest, not just here for like random controversial bits. And you mentioned Galaxies.dev again. Do you want to explain a little bit about kind of what it is? Because I did mean to ask you a little bit earlier, but we ended up talking about cars and stuff, so I completely went off the other way. So
No
what's the
problem.
plan? I mean, I'm obviously, and anyone else that listens to all the code has been aware of it for quite a while now. But for
Mhm.
people who aren't familiar, do you want to explain what is it? What's the plan?
Yeah, so there was a big master plan. I've been running the Ionic Academy, which is a membership site with Ionic courses, but at some point last year, I felt like maybe I should do something else as well. And I thought about adding it to the Academy, but that didn't feel right. So I came up with a plan to develop a whole new platform. And that took me about, I don't know, half a year or 8 months. So we developed with a little team of 3 people, basically, Galaxies.dev. We had a designer and another developer, and basically me, I focused on creating content and shaping the whole vision. And it's become a platform for courses and learning material, tutorials beyond Ionic. So that's the initial thing I said. Because a lot of the Ionic Academy members ask me, "Hey, should I join there? What's in it? Like, why is there no Angular content?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is a platform focused on really the edges of web development. Pretty much what we discussed about in the beginning, like all the fancy frameworks and everything that's going on right now. It's kind of confusing, and we thought about this like, so this is where the galaxies analogy came from, about you have the universe, you have a React planet, and you have an Angular planet, or you have a Svelte planet, and then there are these little additional planets around them, which is the router package or the state handling and all these kind of stuff. So that's where galaxies came from initially. And yeah, we right now have like content on a variety of frameworks like Angular, React, Flutter, Ionic. We have some really great courses. Simon, my co-host, also did a course, and right now 2 more people are working on courses. So it's not just me, because I kind of like to get into new technology, but at the same time, it's really hard to like every month get deep enough into a new topic to create a course about it. Like, that takes real time. So I trust other industry experts to create a Vue course or something, which I'm definitely or absolutely not into. And there will be new courses every month. So right now we do have 6 great courses. We do put a focus on being more practical because that's what I enjoy. So I don't like 6 or 10 hour long courses, and those are usually like 90 minutes to 2 hours, which I think is something you can usually do like in a week or in the evenings if you'll enjoy this. And then you have a good foundation for something new because this is probably also foreshadowing. I saw you had a document with questions, and one question was about how we learn technologies. So this would fit in right now because I kind of like to just get this initial kickstart. So getting some ideas, hearing some words about a framework or something, and then just being on my own. I totally don't like to spend hours reading the documentation about how this functionality works and what that does. So I kind of just want to like to see how I can put something on the screen, maybe navigate somewhere or do some kind of operation and how I structure it. But I feel like that's enough from that point. So I don't know how many people are just like that. I know people also like these 10 and 30-hour courses. And yeah, if you're a beginner, definitely there is value in those long courses as well. But for us, this is more a platform probably for the busy developer, which is a bit more fast paced. And so I think this is meant to be as a kickstart in many different topics because there are just so many topics. And if you want to get a good overview about the JavaScript universe, you can check us out at Galaxies.dev. You can join for free and get access to some tutorials and quick wins. And if you go pro, you get access to all the pro courses. And today we're going to actually have our first office hours. So I'm kind of excited. I never had this. I wanted to add this. I'm still excited if anyone will show up.
How do you do that? Is that just over like Discord or?
Yeah, I set up a Zoom call. That felt like the right thing
Cool.
because I could have probably used something like StreamYard or so as well. I didn't want to do it on YouTube because it's for like only the pro members. So it has to be like somehow protected. StreamYard might have worked. It did get Zoom because I've been on other calls and they used Zoom before. I just hope that when I start the call, somebody will drop into the office hours.
So if it's any consolation, I've done Code a Career like Ask Me Anything events and that kind of thing, or I've done like go lives on TikTok and I have like 3 viewers, and then it's just maybe one guy just giving me a load of abuse, giving me insecurities I never thought I had, and like stuff like that. So I'm sure it'll be all right. But if it's any consolation, we've all been there. But I'm sure you'll get plenty of people because I know you have a lot of keen listeners to all the code. So in terms of the courses available right now, just to actually reiterate, what courses are available if people want to check them out?
So in terms of the pro courses, we have a React Native course, a Next.js course, a Modern Angular course, an Ionic React with Capacitor course, Flutter, Firebase, and I think that's it for now. And currently we're working on SvelteKit, Astro, and Vue courses. So with those 3 additional courses, we're going to actually have a very solid basis. And once we got that, I'm going to dive into Tori, which I know is also something people are really, really interested. I think Tori was also at like the top of the State of JS survey for cross-platform stuff, as it's also based on Rust. So everything comes back to Rust. Probably there's going to be a Rust course in the future as well, but I haven't planned that yet.
I'd love to see it. That sounds really cool, and it's a really cool market. I got interested about this when I was listening to all the code. Actually, when you and Simon were talking about it and saying there's not enough content in that middle ground where it's like you already know a lot of the fundamentals, but you need upskilling in a certain new thing. Like I don't need to be taught all the fundamentals of JavaScript to learn a new JavaScript framework, and that's often what actually ends up happening. Because people try and make the course accessible for everyone, which is great. But the problem is you end up skipping some time. Like usually my tutorials, I'll spend half an hour skipping the first bits, realize that I missed something important, go back, and then just skip around. So it sounds like a really underserved market, actually. I'm probably the exact kind of person you would want, actually. I've got about 4 years experience. So probably that exact kind of UX persona that you're after.
Yeah, it's interesting and definitely a new challenge for me because when I started the Ionic Academy, I was kind of a guru in that market and got quite a lot of subscriptions right in the first week, which I didn't get yet with Galaxies because I'm still pretty much a nobody in all the other communities. And whenever I drop something that is about React, people are gonna scream at me why I'm not doing something with Ionic Angular anymore. Um, just yesterday, for example, I dropped a video. I had high expectations, but like I had a funny. I know whenever I have high expectations, the video is gonna totally like nobody's gonna watch it. But I know for this one, it is really good because it's about Expo and the differences to the React Native CLI,
Hmm.
which is an interesting topic. I haven't found a right solution for this, so I compiled a video and really made good research and did good editing, and I posted it. And I felt like this video should go through the roof, basically like the Angular comeback video, but it's been in views number 10 of 10 in YouTube. So the worst performing
Yeah,
video. But that's
I know
because my
that
channel
feeling.
is like they are Angular people, and if they see a
Mm.
React Native video and they're like, I don't care, I don't gonna click that. But I hope it's gonna rank at some point if the React Native community is gonna picking it up, because it's
Yeah.
really I think it's really a valuable video. I don't say this all the time. Sometimes it's more like, yeah, this is just another tutorial because we need a tutorial this week. But this is definitely a great video. So if you're anyhow interested in React Native and Expo, go to my channel. You can also, what is my name currently? Galaxies_dev, I think. Should be my short handle on YouTube as well.
We'll have a link to that in the description, so hopefully the Code of Career listeners can give you a nice boost on that. And I think YouTube's cool because it's the videos, they don't get, it's not like they're either going to get pushed immediately or not at all. So you never know when you're going to get that spike. So I'm sure once the tribe discover it, you'll be sorted in that respect. And in terms of for people who are maybe a few years earlier in their career, um, what would you advise them if they're maybe a year or two off being a Galaxies.dev customer and they're trying to break into the industry right now? What advice would you give someone who, let's say, simple example, we're recording this in early March. Someone started learning to code on January the 1st, and their personal goal is to break into the industry at the end of this calendar year. What advice would you give them?
So this is not about becoming a creator. This is really just becoming about a developer, right?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would definitely, if you were at ground zero, I would start with JavaScript. And to be honest, at this point, I would just pick up and learn React, and then move into Next.js. If you're interested in like the fastest way to find a job, I think that is definitely the stable and the best way to do it, because the React market, I think React is still like 70% of the market or something like that.
Yeah, it
Next
feels like 90% of the market, honestly.
Yeah,
It's
I
crazy.
mean,
I'm
I mean,
glad
you
I
don't
know
have
it.
to. I mean, you don't have to get into Next.js. Like, it's not
Mhm.
like everyone is using Next.js, but it's like what Simon said. It's like the missing framework for React that gives your application a lot of more structure and architecture. So, picking up React. Although, if you hear like, "Oh, SvelteKit is the new cool thing," and maybe Solid, and don't listen to that. Like, if you want a job, just learn React. I made a video actually earlier this year, and I said it in there as well. I mean, I love Angular and I love Ionic and all that stuff, but just being honest with yourself, the market is going in the React direction, and tons of React applications need maintenance in the next years. They are still started, so that's the safest bet for every new developer to get into anything in the React community, in my eyes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And actually, the creator who will not be named, who is Theo Ping.gg.
Yeah.
Sorry, Simon B. He did a good video on this actually called "Is React Dead?" And actually, it was really good because he made that exact point that you made about how so much of the ecosystem is already built in it.
Mhm.
And so we're always going to need React developers for quite a long time. And I wonder if it will be part of my stack for 2030 still, where people are still going to be using at least some flavor of it. Because, PHP is still, what, 80% of the internet, right? And who's coding new stuff in PHP now? Not many people.
Yeah, definitely. So React is it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. Just new developers look at what's being used in the market. Oh, that's React, so I'm going to learn React as well. And in 5 years, we're going to have even more React developers. That's just natural. But maybe if Angular makes his comeback this year, maybe the tide's going to shift. I don't know.
Yeah. It's an interesting compromise, isn't it? Because you want to make sure that you have the skill set that is most viable in the current market, but then also as well, you want to be relatively future proofed in the sense of you can predict a trend. So I think, yeah, my advice. would be very similar to yours, where it's like learn React, but then also as well try and pick something else up once you're already kind of in the industry that makes you a bit different.
I mean, as a developer, you kind of have to reinvent yourself anyway every other year. So just be prepared for that. You probably going to start with React, and that's a solid skill to get started. But I think by 25, you probably have to pick up another framework or another language. Definitely.
It's not like
I
being
don't know
an
where
accountant where the numbers would never change. Like a balance sheet is always a balance sheet. For us, our job changes, especially on the front end, pretty significantly every 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, I could have, when I was a mobile developer for iOS, I probably could have just stick to Objective-C, and I could probably to this day still write Objective-C apps, and they would look okay, and I could maintain them. But yeah, you just have to be open for new stuff. I don't actually know. So that's why I said before on the pod where Simon was laughing at me, I said, I don't want to be a coder when I'm 40. And then he was like, oh, I'm already close to 40. I just don't know how good my skills will be, like, let's say between 40 and 50, to pick up these new things every other year. Like, I feel at some point I just want to retire on some technology. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen or if it's going to be possible. So that would be cool if we had like the JavaScript full stack framework front end that we agree on for the next like 10 years.
Be convenient. Ideally, something that we already know in and out, like completely would be ideal if we already know it. I know what you mean, though. I don't really see myself coding past 40. I see myself like maybe going into some kind of like product role of some kind and managing more on the high level, because I just think my brain is slow as it is at 27. So
it is. I mean, it's a fact in biology.
Yeah, it is, and it's harder as well because obviously your life gets busier, generally speaking, the older you get, and so to learn the new technologies, like if I had more commitments, there's no way that I'll be able to do all of this stuff and learn new stuff outside of work. So it's I know what you mean. It's an interesting one to think about.
Yeah, when you're in your 20s and 30s, like there's no problem in the evening to watch a Galaxies.dev course, but when you're like in your 40s and 50s, you probably just want to, I don't know, chill and drink a wine or eat some cheese. I don't know.
To be fair, that's pretty much what I want to do now. Although I'd love to do that while watching a Galaxies.dev course, just the classy way of doing it with some cheese and wine. Definitely not just with a cheap beer and a cigarette.
That would. Don't do that.
To be fair, without getting this podcast somehow banned off Spotify or whatever, because I don't know if this is a banned topic, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I find I actually code better after 1 or 2 pints of beer, for what it's worth. But yeah.
I don't drink anymore, so Simon and I. But I've heard that. I heard that argument, definitely.
Yeah, a bit of Dutch courage.
Yeah, for me, it's coffee.
Yeah, that's probably the healthier way of doing it.
Probably, yeah. I actually don't know. Like both coffee and alcohol both have some kind of effect on your body. I don't know.
It's better than Monster Energy. Coffee's better than Monster Energy, which is what I end up having. So
everything on this earth is probably better than Monster Energy.
I just come home with some kind of fluorescent can at sort of 9 a.m. before work, and my girlfriend's like, "No, come on, don't do it." Just like some like yellow and red can. God knows what's in there. But it gets me going.
Wasn't it in How I Met Your Mother where they were drinking this tantrum or something on their road trip, and they were just constantly freaking out in the car? I think it was one episode of How I Met Your Mother. Yeah,
I think it's probably based on Four Loko, which was basically Monster Energy mixed with alcohol, and they banned it because people were just going too crazy off it. Because it was called Four Loko because you drink 4 and you go loco. That was the marketing.
That's a nice branding, definitely.
I mean, completely socially irresponsible, but yeah.
I don't know. We had something in Germany, I think, when I was younger, called Alco Pops. I don't know. It was the same.
Oh name. Yeah, I had a few on Saturday night actually.
Are they still? I feel like they're not allowed in Germany anymore. I don't know. I actually don't know what is it, like alcohol with some kind of lemonade or something.
I think pretty much, yeah. So we have we call them WKD here, or VK, and it's quite popular among rugby players after games. So on Saturday night this week, after I played my match, we signed off with a few of those. So I was not too with it on Sunday morning, but yeah, I'm not surprised they maybe tried to ban those.
I have high respect for rugby players because I like to watch American football a bit, and they got like this whole stuff that's protecting them, and you're pretty much doing the same, but without any kind of protection. I don't know how you're doing it. You're not getting unbelievable hurt every damn time.
Well, one, yeah, it does hurt, but two as well, we don't run and tackle head first like American football players do.
Okay.
So they could learn a lot from our tackle technique. But saying that, I've been concussed twice this season, so it's which again probably doesn't help with the code. But here we are. Anyway, cool. I think that sort of brought us up to. I actually need to be on my stand up in a little while. So it's been really awesome speaking. Do you have anything? Obviously, we talked a bit about Galaxies.dev, but obviously you produce great content yourself, both with all the code and by yourself. Where can people find your content?
Actually, most of my new content will also be available on Galaxies.dev, so either as a tutorial or as a quick win. So best for you would be to just create your free account if you're interested at Galaxies.dev. And if you feel the need to go through a few of our pro courses, then of course I'd be happy if you upgrade to a pro. And if you listen to us or like to listen to my voice and Simon British voice, also check out all the code podcasts. Should be in pretty much Spotify or every podcasting player on this.
Yeah. I think it is literally every single time when you listen to the Code of Career, the suggested podcast is All the Code. So almost certainly just look to the right on whatever podcast player you're on right now. You'll just find All the Code. It's like I feel like they're brothers as podcasts. It's nice.
We should bring you back soon.
We should do a special crossover at some point. The three of us. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah,
definitely 100% up for that. Yeah. Awesome. But cool. Yeah, it's been really, really great chatting. And yeah, just to emphasize, there are plenty of free options on Galaxies.dev, so people should go check it out, no matter whether you're looking to invest in a pro plan or not. So people should go and check it out, and your podcast as well. But thank you so much for your time, Simon. It's been a pleasure actually finally meeting you after listening to you for so long.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad we're going to have you soon on the All the Code podcast as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And from what I understand, you have 24 other podcasts to contact to try and get on as part of your challenge. So I hope that's going well.
You're going to probably hear me on other podcasts in the near future.
Cool. Looking forward to that. Thanks again,
Awesome.
Simon. And thank you to the audience for tuning in for another episode of The Code of Career.